Brady. E. Flynn.
Here.
T. Giles.
Here.
B. Jellison.
Here.
Arlo Iacono.
Here.
H. Randall.
Here.
K. Van Bergen Buteau.
Please rise. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item is the consent agenda. For one motion for the approval of the minutes and the approval of the manifest.
So moved.
Moved by Ben,
Second.
second by Evelyn. Any deletions, additions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Next is public comment period. Is anybody here for public comment? We're here for principal comment. And assistant principal. Public comment period will remain open until 6:32. Student members report. Mr.
Okay,
Bean.
so I have to apologize for not being at the last meeting when I was originally intended to give you a report. I believe that day I was down in Concord. for a
Yes, you
meeting.
were.
Yeah. But I'm more than happy to give it today. I'm sure that you guys have probably already read it too. So I'll just kind of glean through it, I guess. Kind of the biggest things that stuck out out of it with regards to like student input about things was one, or actually a couple of students had asked me about kind of the rules regarding whether or not students are allowed on campus during sports off times to still use our sports fields in case they wanted to do extra practicing on their own time. Granted, it was more of a concern during the fall sports season, during like field hockey and soccer. Granted, now we're moving into winter sports, and we aren't using those fields really. So the relevance of the concern is kind of waned for the time being, but regardless, when we get back into spring, I'm sure we'll hear more about it. But that was one thing that was brought up to me about it, and yeah, just they had expressed want to be able to use the fields during off times as well, if possible. And then also another piece of input I got from a couple of students was about weighted GPAs. The primary concern about this was that a lot of students were citing that, mostly seniors applying to college were citing that most colleges require the submission of a weighted GPA with an application. However, the GPA we get through the guidance office is an unweighted GPA, and some students had talked with guidance about the availability of a weighted GPA, or they were still unsure of how to kind of obtain it or go about finding it, and whether or not there was an easier solution to finding it rather than having to do the hand calculations themselves. If there was more of a streamlined way of being able to figure out their weighted GPAs. But that was kind of the extent of that concern. And then another sports-related concern I got from a few students, the piece of input I wrote in my report specifically about it came from a senior, which was the eligibility policy for fall sports being taking 6 classes during your academic period to make you eligible for the sport. The student cited that the 6 classes, in their opinion, seemed a little like it could come to a burden for some students, particularly seniors, they cited, as not all seniors have to have a loaded schedule their senior year, and they have more credits than they need necessarily during senior year, so they can have a more relaxed schedule. However, if they have that more relaxed schedule, it typically doesn't meet the 6 class requirement, even if they want to play sports. So the student expressed some kind of confliction with that, being a senior that did have more credits than needed their senior year, but still wanted to play sports, and in doing so had to take on extra classes that they didn't necessarily need in order to play those sports. So that student in particular was just wondering if there was any kind of alternative that could be proposed to that eligibility requirement, or if it's something that could be seen as more lenient in the future potentially. And then kind of the other explanation given to me from the student specifically about the 6 classes being more of like a not needing to have to take, or not needing to have to take them, but having to take them, if that makes sense. That was probably really confusing the way I just said that, so I'm sorry. But one of the concerns particularly was for AP classes, which are already heavily accelerated courses that propose a much larger workload for students than other classes do. And for some seniors that are playing sports again, there are some seniors that are taking more than 1 AP class. And even like 2 AP classes in itself can be a pretty heavy workload for some students. So then also having to tack on other classes into that schedule just so they can play sports too, seemed a bit challenging for some people. But other than that, that was really the extent of the concern and the voice of opinion that student wanted me to bring forward. Kind of on a side note though, as more of a recap of student activity within the school these past few months, it's been a pretty good start to the year. Everything's gone pretty smoothly, I'd say, from a student perspective. We had homecoming, our little homecoming stint this year went really well. We had the return of the homecoming parade after its year hiatus, which was really nice. There was a quick moment of stress kind of towards the beginning of the parade where we had a little bit of a challenge with one float just because of some, I want to say traffic issues maybe it was, but there was just a delayed arrival of one of the floats, which caused a little bit of stress, but it worked out great in the end. And big props and big thanks to Andrea Glidden and all of her volunteers for setting that up for us this year. The pep rally was fun and exciting, planned by our student council, and then we had our sports games on Saturday along with the dance following that night. Cross country won, their boys team won the race that morning. And the boys soccer team finished with a win as well. I don't recall how the field hockey game went and the girls soccer game though went. I don't recall, but I do remember them. It went pretty well overall, I have to say. And then also we had the I Applied Day on November 2nd, hosted by the guidance office, where we had 22 seniors come in and apply to New Hampshire colleges for free that day. So that was really nice, being able to do that. Yeah, we had, I think it was said that out of all the students, over 30 different schools were applied to. Oh wait, nope, I'm reading that wrong, I think. Sorry about that.
Applied.
Yeah, that might be a typo actually, because I know it was 22 seniors that did apply that day. But regardless, we had representation come down from NEAF. We had a NEAF representative come in to help with the process, and 3 different guidance officers from different schools come in as well. So it was a really awesome day, and it was really great to be a part of that. And then also we have exhibition night coming back up this year on December 13th. So there's been a lot of buzz about that in preparation for that, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing how that goes.
Do you want to, this is kind of a big deal, I'm gonna toot his horn. Do you wanna share with everybody?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
I'm
So,
just so proud of him.
last meeting I was attending, I made the announcement about the Senate Youth Program that I applied for. While I haven't heard any more news about that yet, I also recently, alongside that, in tandem with it, through the help there in Hennessy down in Concord, was appointed to a legislative advisory council down in Concord as well.
It's a big deal, because they don't typically have a lot of North Country student representation, so like,
Yeah.
it's just awesome.
Upon talking with the chairman from the council that I'm on to, I was told that I was the first student from COAS to be appointed to the board in 3 years. So,
So great.
it was a big stepping stone.
Which one are you on? Which one are you representing?
It's the Legislative Youth Advisory Council.
That's
awesome. So it's an advisory council comprised entirely of students with two state congressional representatives as well. But yeah, students from all over the state, and it's been pretty exciting so
I
far.
bet. That's awesome,
fantastic.
Giles.
Thank
We're
you.
proud of you.
Thank you. Also to absolve any confusion about why I'm kneeling tonight, if anyone's wondering, I just thought I'd clarify.
I just noticed it.
I didn't either.
I recently just had surgery on my lower back, so I can't sit for extended periods of time, so I'll be kneeling. But just to clarify.
I just thought it was just you being you.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I think that wraps up my report. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Awesome.
I'm wondering about how your questions are gonna get answered about the
Yeah.
not weighted grades
Yeah.
and the fields, et cetera. Maybe, I mean, that seems like it could go during a student assembly, that kind of stuff, but the principal's heard your questions, so I'm sure.
I would imagine the requirement for 6 classes, all of our policies can be asked for an exemption to the school board, so.
Okay.
I know maybe we should get that information, that's an option out there more.
Well, I think if it follows the chain of command, I mean, they can't come directly to us, they're gonna go through.
Right, no, I
distribution
understand that,
first.
but I'm just saying.
I'm drawing a blank on the name, but the state organization that heads up the sports. Yeah, is that a requirement from them, or is that one of our?
The student has to carry 4.
4, okay,
And our athletic policy, which is board policy, is
is 6, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm next.
Yes.
Okay, before we do the performance data presentation, I want to read to you, because the people that are watching don't have this paper in front of them, the recommendations from the high school advisory committee to the board about the transition of 7-8. That's expanded, which included the pre-K consolidation to Whitefield Elementary School and the middle level consolidation to Lancaster Elementary. So regarding the grades 7 and 8 consolidation to Lancaster, the advisory committee recommends postponing the transition of the middle school to the high school or consolidation at Lancaster Elementary School. We propose reconsideration for fiscal year 26 or 27 to ensure a successful and effective process with a positive impact on academics, co-curricular activities, social aspects, staffing, fiscal considerations, and facility use for the district and community. Based on our current findings, we anticipate a significant positive impact on the transition and/or consolidation in future years due to the projected decline in enrollment and benefits of shared resources. However, this may not be the case for the projected 2024-2025 school year. Surveys conducted in the community, there's 124, indicate a lack of support for the consolidation of middle grades, primarily due to concerns about transportation over a large geographical area, resulting in lengthy bus routes. Surveys to staff, which was only 45, and 7-8 students, which was 100, showed mixed results, with transportation being a perceived disadvantage and shared resources seen as an advantage. Regarding the pre-K consolidation to Whitefield, given the lack of community support for middle level consolidation, Consolidating an early ed program at West is not feasible due to insignificant and inappropriate space without the relocation of grades 7 and 8 to less. Current surveys from all the groups highlight the advantage of shared resources in a central early ed program. Concerns have been raised about children having to change schools when entering kindergarten, especially for those residing in towns assigned to Lancaster. The advisory committee did not conduct a cost analysis due to the strong community opposition to the consolidation of middle-level programs. Comments from the community overwhelmingly supported moving grades 7-8 to the high school, which is a central location. So the recommendations are: do not proceed with consolidation of programs for the 24-25 school year, as the community is not ready for the change. Evaluate enrollment annually to ensure fiscal responsibility and avoid duplicate programs in 2 schools. In the long term, the committee believes that the benefits of a centralized middle-level program outweigh the challenges. Retain the committee, encourage new membership, and monitor enrollment trends and systemic changes. Schedule annual meetings coinciding with the submission of our beginning of year New Hampshire Department of Education data in mid-October.
Any questions? Thank the committee. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Thank everyone involved in this. It's a tremendous amount of work and fantastic job. I would just wonder about the last couple recommendations. I'm not sure, like, retaining the committee, like, what benefit that will bring us, because the answers to these questions are not really going to change. It's not that Dalton's suddenly going to become closer to Whitefield or Lancaster. The distance between Twin and Lancaster is not going to change. We know that, most of the opinions that are expressed are also going to be pretty static, right? Parents are always going to be concerned about their children riding buses for a lengthy time. So I'm just not sure about the wisdom of keeping this committee around, for the long, at least another year or two. Like, what benefit we would get from.
Well, do you
From
remember
that.
Jefferson? It took 15 years.
Sure, yeah.
And
yeah.
people just revisited
Right.
until the enrollment went to 48.
Yeah.
But
But
do we need a committee to do that, or is that a
It
data
seems-
spot that the
yeah.
board can now monitor
Yeah.
based on the recommendations
Right.
of the committee?
You said it much better than
So it is
So-
your preview to do that. I
Yeah.
mean, this is our recommendations to you.
Yeah.
And then you can reject or accept any
Yeah.
that you want.
So, I was just gonna say, under new business, we can maybe go through tonight, or
And you can reject those. I mean, that's totally your prerogative.
I think we could probably do it under unfinished business then, because we've got the advisory committee updates
Right.
slotted there.
okay.
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so next we have Angie and Mike. You're going to be doing this pretty much solo, and we'll have the other principals here to answer questions. Worked really hard on this presentation. Thank you. I'm wondering if this can
So
the audience
basically what we're
see this?
presenting,
You want to just speak clearly so the owl grabs you.
I think maybe somebody might have to stand there so the owl will see them. Is that right? So they
Yeah.
can see the board? Is that right, Jeremy?
Yeah.
I know you're not supposed to stand in front of the data. I was always taught that, but.
Right.
If the owl's gonna go that way.
Let's go this way.
I know you guys are all able
Yeah.
to do this. All right. So what we're presenting tonight is proficiency and growth data from spring 2020. Just as a district, we're not where we want to be. I think we all know that. We're going to be sharing some action steps later in the presentation. Steps that we're taking, some of which have already begun, that hopefully when implemented, we believe will create some positive in the right direction. Before we get into the data, I wanted to address some things that we've been running into when we've been doing some research around it. At any given time, there are different places you can go to get the data. And so oftentimes when we're talking about percent proficiency, somebody will say, well, I looked it up and it was this. I looked it up and it was this, and it's off by a few percentage points. It's kind of baffled us, but we found that there are different places and times that you can get data. So when we go into Cambium, we select what date the data is coming from. So I could go in today and select just the kids that are in our district today, that are ours today, and it's gonna give us our 2023 or percent proficient. That's gonna be different than the data that comes from May when we test. So if I select that date, it's gonna be off, because if we've lost students, gained students. Another place where we found some inconsistency is the state report card is there for anybody to go to, and you can select the year and you can look at the data there. What's reported on the report card doesn't include our opt-out students. That's the state's reporting. New Hampshire allows opt-outs by students and parents. And those kids that opt out count as a 0 against us for the accountability measure, which is stated accountability. And so those percentage points might be off a bit when you see the accountability data versus what's on the report. Just so that you're aware that if you see something and it doesn't quite line up, that might be. What we've taken for tonight's presentation comes from the report card. So it's the piece that that you can see, the public can see on the state's website. So it counts the kids that tested in our district in May of that year. So the first slide we have shows the ELA percentage. And so what we did was we lined them up by grade. The blue is our district, the gray is the state. Starting over on Mike's side with third grade, so the blue is third grade. And then the third grade state average, and then it moves to the overview. You'll see we've labeled these for the 11th grade because that's SAT. So it's not New Hampshire SAS, but it's still, it's a different test, but it's the state measure for ELA. Same format for math.
Can we go back to the previous slide? I just didn't have a chance to
Yes,
kind of
absolutely.
soak
Thank
it
you for
in, so,
stopping me.
yeah. I assume we'll talk at some point about the 7th grade. Yep.
We can address any information on
Okay.
any of the slides at the time.
Okay.
So if it's a
Yeah,
question you'd like to
yeah,
discuss,
just,
let's,
yeah,
now would be the right time.
do we know kind of what happened there? Because it looks like there's this, I mean, I know these are different classes, right? So it's a different group of children. But
We're also going to take a look at that 7th grade group, how they performed in the past few
previous,
years.
yeah.
Okay, so if you keep in mind that their proficiency rate last spring was 31%, let's watch that over the
Right.
coming years.
Okay.
It's, I'm going to say it's normal to see some variability amongst the grade levels,
Mhm.
but that does stick out.
Yeah,
And then as we switch slides, as you've seen
right.
map, we do have some significant points.
Yeah, and so when we look at, we did break it out by cohort. So when we look at the cohort, it's going to be our current 8th graders. That's the slide that's going to represent that
Show them,
7th grade
okay.
group.
All
And
right.
then we'll follow them back a couple of years.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. Thank you for stopping me. And so then math.
And we've been seeing a significant dip in 5th grade math proficiency. Questions have been asked about whether it's test, are other schools seeing that, is it function of standards? I think when we look at the 5th grade, 6th grade math performance, state math performance, we can confidently say it's not the test, it's something specific to the instruction. 5th and 6th grade. We've already started having some of those conversations. What is it that happens at the 5th grade? See, our 3rd and our 4th graders significantly higher than that historically, we start to see a decline back again in 7th and 8th grade. That's something that we'll be talking about in terms of next steps.
In some conversations with veteran teachers who have taught in the district, they aren't currently 5th or 6th grade teachers. They have been in the past. Prior to New Hampshire SAS, they remember about it. So that was good information for us. And so now this year we're taking proactive measures in both schools, really dig in, look at the standards, look at our programs, look at what do we need to supplement, how do we need to support our students.
And actually going back to 3rd and 4th grade instruction, standards there that might impact or have to be solid when you make that shift into some 5th grade standards. We're looking at the instruction, not just at 5th and 6th grade, but at 3rd, 4th grade level.
And so just to clarify too, this is a piece that we talked about at ed programming last time. You won't necessarily see a climbing of proficiency from one grade to the next, because at each grade level, they're being tested on the standards for that grade level, right? So it's a different set of standards for each one of those bars, specific to that grade. It's not the overall universe of maths proficiency that someone would achieve by the end of the 11th grade, and they're slowly gaining and creating a cumulative climb. So the conversation about standards is very relevant because, as Mike said, if we don't have solid building blocks in 4th grade, when they step into testing in the 5th grade, that scaffolding isn't there for the 5th grade standard.
I know we're going to talk more about the plan moving forward. I think we really just need to say that although yes, we need to address this dip that we see, like none of this is where we want to be.
Right,
And
across the board.
and to be fair, it's not good across the state either.
Right.
You know, we lag behind on every level there, but I think we just need to say that clearly that we know there's a problem that really urgently has to be addressed.
And science, there are fewer data points because science is tested at 5th, 8th, and 11th grade. On this test, you don't see the SAT label because the 11th graders do take New Hampshire.
Interestingly here, I don't know how statistically significant the gap is, but we've performed better than the state average in those. And that raised questions for us too at programming about how do you not have the ELA and the math, which you would expect would be scaffolds for science learning, but there's something happening there.
Yeah.
It's just a little ahead, a tiny bit ahead of the curve. Still, as you say, Herb, with state average for 8th grade at 35% is not fabulous at all, but.
So that's proficiency. We're going to take a look at actually some SAS growth data.
So can I interrupt one more
Please.
thing? I just want to point out, oddly, we don't have any sort of assessment for the social studies piece, which I think we should say and explain that we just,
It's not done.
it's not done. Yeah,
It's not.
which oddly, but
It's not a federally or
Yeah.
state assessed
Yeah.
content area.
yeah, it's a good question. It would seem like we
Well,
want to
they have
measure
their own
everything
civics
else. Why don't
requirements.
we?
The
There's
new
a new
civics
civics
requirement
requirement, so it wouldn't
Yeah.
be
State level.
would
surprising.
be state.
Yeah.
So those 3 slides represent SAS proficiency last year at the grade level compared to the state. We have access to another data point with SAS that we haven't actually talked about much, if at all, in previous data presentations. That's growth with SAS. Typically, when we talk about academic growth in this district, we're using the NWEA test to measure that. But I think there's an important data point and an important metric that we're going to look at in the next couple of slides that look at our growth, our students' average growth in SAS testing compared to the state. We're not where we want to be with proficiency, but we're seeing some growth data that's very interesting. To the next slide. Let me walk you through what this measures, first of all. It's the mean growth percentile in ELA for our district students in 4th through 8th grade. So mean growth percentile. We take a look at a 5th grader during the spring 22 testing season. Not this past one, but the one before. 5th grader who perhaps earns a score of 612 in their ELA test. When they take their test again in 6th grade, the following year, the state of New Hampshire goes back and looks at all of the students who scored a 612 during their spring 22 year and wants to take a look at how did they grow over the following year. And so they take all of those 612s, they look at their spring 23 ELA score, and where did they score this time? And you're going to see some of them grew this much, some of them grew this much. But they're going to plot all of them on a continuum or in a distribution. And then they're going to look to see where did this individual White Mountains Regional 5th grader, 6th grader score this time? How much did they grow? And where do they fall within that distribution percentile? Very interestingly, when we looked at 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we're seeing the mean, the average growth for all of our 4th graders in the district from their 22 score, 56th percentile, meaning they're following smack in the middle of growth compared to all other students in the state of New Hampshire with their starting achievement. Some of them had lower achievement points to start with, some of them had higher. But when they looked at the growth on average compared to all the other students with those starting points, we're scoring at the 56th percentile, right smack in the middle. Overall for ELA, 4th through 8th grade, 48th percentile in growth, right smack in the middle. What that tells me is that when we take a look at the impact of our instruction across 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and moving students from where they started, spring of 22, where they ended, spring of 23, we moved our students with instruction in terms of their own personal growth at a rate and a level that is average across the state of New Hampshire. We'd like to see us at the 75th percentile. We don't want to see us at the 25th percentile. So when I take a look at where are we proficiency-wise, we're not where we want to be. But when people ask, are our kids learning things? They absolutely positively are. And they're doing so at a rate and a level that is average for the state of New Hampshire. Of course, we want to be above average. Okay? So this is ELA. We are making gains with our students with the instruction we're giving.
Before we go on, though, I just want to clarify, this is 4th through 8th grade because it takes 2 consecutive years in order to do this, to collect this growth data. The 3rd grade is the first year of testing, so we can't do that. And then where there's a phase where they don't test, we can't do that. The other piece to this, too, is that when we looked at over time, so there's a gap where we can't look at growth because there wasn't consecutive years of testing COVID. But when we looked at the growth from 21, 22, it was pretty statistically similar, like 1 percentage point. So we didn't drop in growth. We might have dropped a point and then grew a point in certain areas. And then when we looked back pre-COVID, same thing. So same growth happening.
Percentiles.
So we've held steady there. I think that's important for us, an important piece to the puzzle as we're looking forward.
Take a look at math. Again, we see variability. Of course, we're seeing that 5th, 6th grade drop once again, and then recovery in middle school. Not as consistent across the board. Overall, 46th percentile in terms of math compared to other students in the state of New Hampshire. This is going to have a tremendous impact on proficiency. Of course, this is as well. As we look at action steps to improve these, we would expect over the next couple of years to see those growth increase. When Angie was talking about looking at the 3 growth data points over the past couple of years that we looked at and them being pretty consistent, what that tells me is that the stability of our instruction has been, it's been stable over 3 years. However, our percentile, our percent of students who are proficient has continued to drop a bit. What that suggests to me is that with more rigorous instruction on specific standards, we can make an impact in that, climb that proficiency rate. It would suggest to me that there are other schools in the state of New Hampshire who recognize that by ramping up that instruction and creating a higher percentile growth, close that gap in proficiency. So when we talk about next steps, we've got some very specific things that we believe that we can do that are some short-term gain, but we're really looking at some of both growth and then subsequently closing that gap with the rest of the state. This was a piece we did not present at Ed Programming, just became available to us about a week ago. We had to kind of take a look at the data to figure out what it meant. But I think this is important information. We are moving students. Students are learning at a rate that's average. We've got to create a rate that's above average. Accelerated or catch-up growth in the next couple of years to close that gap with state proficiency.
So indeed, not having seen it at Ed Programming, what comes to my mind is there's a faster growth for the 7th grade. Is there a shift in curriculum at that point, or a difference in the way things are taught, or some sort of consolidation of standards that happens, a consolidation of the scaffolding that happens in 7th grade?
Particular to math?
Particular math, yeah, specific for this
So-
particular route.
Programming wise, that shift happens at 6th grade.
Forward could impact the growth rate
Yep.
into 7th grade.
The other thing I want us to keep in mind is this is one cohort, this is one cohort. What we haven't had time to do since this data is newer to us is take this 6th grade back and take a look at what's their percentile growth when they're 5th graders, 4th graders. And that's something that we'll be taking as we
Be
continue
nice to have that come back to Ed.
dig into this data.
And do you get granular enough as you look at it, that you're looking at it by school as well to see?
Oh,
We
yeah, the
certainly could.
schools-
Yep,
The
we
school,
certainly
and the
could.
schools are doing that
Okay.
already.
I know we see the 6th grade, but obviously we have
Two
two
6th
sets of
Yep.
6th graders
Yep.
to see.
Actually, when we talk about digging down and getting the next slide that we look at by, yeah, so taking that next step and kind of digging a little further and looking at specific cohorts. Proficiency data, again, for our students with IEPs compared to the state of New Hampshire. ELA, we're at 10%, and the state is 17. Math is that below the 10th percentile, 9.9? So we're not quite sure what the exact metric is when the state reports scores below the 10%, say, below the 10%, whereas the state is at 14. And our science is below the 10%, state at 13. That's our students with IEPs. Our students with socioeconomic challenges, the gap isn't as big at all. I mean, statistically, I'm going to say we are pacing the state in terms of proficiency for students with socioeconomic challenges. But historically in the district, this goes back quite a few years, we have typically seen our students competitive with their state peers with those same challenges. 30%, 21%, outpacing the state. I will say statistically that outpacing the state. Science. So then when we look at how our students with IEPs growing, what's their growth percentile, we're seeing again some, what I believe are some pretty solid numbers for students with 43% of our students with IEPs or the 43rd percentile for our students with IEPs at ELA making that annual growth, and 39% at math. Don't have state comparisons to that. And for students with socioeconomic challenges, 47th percentile at ELA and 46th percentile. If we take those two cohorts who have some some significant challenges to their learning, compare their growth percentiles to the entire district's growth percentile. You see that there's not much difference. So across the board, regardless of regular education, special education, or socioeconomic challenges, we seem to be moving students even when they have some significant learning risks.
In Connect, we broke it down by cohort, grade level, yes.
Yep, so this is the
So this
longitudinal
is
data.
our longitudinal, so current 12th graders, so this first cluster of columns is their ELA. We can go as far back as 2018, that's when New Hampshire SAS started. So obviously there's going to be 1 year for 2020 where we didn't test grade. That data is missing. And then again, we did label the SAT, so when it switches from New Hampshire SAS to SAT, the middle group of columns is math, and then there's only one report out for science because of the missing year they would have tested science. And current 9th graders, because they took the test in 8th grade, New Hampshire SAS is not administered in 9th or 10th grade. That these current 9th graders tested in 8th grade last year. Again, you can see, so in 5th grade in 2020, we didn't test, but the 6th grade year, you see that drop that we were talking about earlier. You still see that considerable. And so this is the current 8th grade, which was that 7th grade group you were asking about. When you look at them, it was the ELA drop that you were looking at, and I'm not really sure. There is so this 6th grade year was the first year of Fountas and Pinnell classroom system. 7th and 8th grade is not a part of that implementation. So that would have been a change. And then the math, again, you see drop and then slowly start to climb.
Andy, you talked a little bit in ed programming last time about the potential for the tests being administered at a time when the standards tested hadn't yet been taught. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's one of the pieces that we're diving into is we're looking at the scope and sequence of the programming that we're using to see, because the testing is done in May, and if as you're teaching a unit, right, if students are struggling, you might spend more time in that unit to revisit the skills, and then you move on to the next unit. And that puts you behind on the scope and sequence sometimes, and that might lead to a situation where some of the standards being taught or standards being assessed haven't yet been. We're not sure, we're still in the process of kind of connecting those scope and sequences at each grade level, looking at that. We're also looking into the rigor of the programming that we're using. Is the depth of knowledge that we're requiring the students to answer, to work towards, is it high enough? Does it compare?
You were mentioning this afternoon, just today, as you and teacher leader were taking a look at what's tested and how it's tested compared to what's taught and how it's taught, that the depth of knowledge on how it was taught was significantly lower. So kind of going back to digging into a very granular layer, not only on cohort how they're doing, but how is it tested and how is it taught, and what's the potential disconnect that's going on there. So not only time it's taught, but level of rigor.
Right, 7th graders, so this cohort tested last year as 6th graders. Their 3rd grade year, they did not test, so their 4th grade year would have been their first year pass. With this and second year of Fountas Linscala. Then current sixth graders, again, noted the first and second year of Fountas Linscala. Fifth grade, they tested as fourth graders, that's why you see only 2 data points. 'Cause they're right, and so for the other cohort, we would only have 1, so you've already seen. So our summary. I don't remember what it is, but now I'll put my back to you, sorry. So yeah, we've already said, they're not where we want them to be overall. The growth percentile, mean growth percentile is helpful, it's good information. Bit of help in how to step up. Drop in math scores at the 5th grade level consistently across the district, but not as significantly at the state level. We need to do more investigating. Overall, our math scores, we need to do IEPs.
Yeah, our students with IEPs are performing slightly less proficient than peers across the state, but our students with socioeconomic challenges are now and historically been similar to or slightly above what we've seen.
Aside from our current 7th graders, those first 2 years of the Fountas Linscala classroom implementation showed some growth in efficiency. Right, it's okay if you can't read this. This is really just kind of a visual to show you. So there was new legislation this year requiring literacy screening for all K through 3 students. And so the state gave us 10 skills that need to be assessed for all K through 3 students. I say that lightly, some of those skills are not appropriate to assess in a kindergartner. So these are the skills we have to look at based on developmental appropriateness. And so what I did was I created this matrix to look at the skills and then look at the assessments that we use. So we currently use DIBELS to do a screening. We used to do all of kindergarten and then any 1st or 2nd graders that maybe showed some signs of being at risk. Now we're doing the entire classes, K through 3. So we connected the pieces of DIBELS to the skills, and anything that wasn't covered by DIBELS, we made sure that either NWEA was picking up or we pulled in another assessment. That's what this means. After that first round of screening, we then have to do, for any student who shows at risk that is an at benchmark, we have to do a second round of screening. Dig a little deeper and think about what kind of instruction we need to put in place for those students. And so that's what this other column is. If a student shows that they're at risk, here's the secondary screener that we're going to use to get the information to help drive the instruction. So it's really just an organizational tool to make sure we were hitting all of the bases. And here's that data. So this is kindergarten. So this first one is LNF, letter naming fluency. So it says, in parentheses is the benchmark. So we were expecting our kindergartners to have 25 letters within a minute. These are time indicators. When they came in, 14% of our kindergartners across the district were able to do that. So those students didn't need a second round of assessment there, but the rest did. Needed a secondary assessment. PSF is phoneme segmentation fluency, where I say a word, and then the student has to say the sounds in the word. Students, because we teach them to talk with sounds. They needed to have 5, 20% of our students were able to do that. Nonsense word fluency is the next one, well, the next 2. And so the first column, nonsense word fluency, is correct letter sound. So they see a nonsense word like enough. They can read it, and they would get 3 points for correct letter sounds. If they don't blend the whole thing enough, then they don't get a point for the words read correctly. That's why it's recorded in 2 different ways. So for a correct letter sound, the target is 9. 8% of our students were able to do that. And when it came to blending the word, 4% of our students. They were expected to blend 1 word. And then word reading fluency is kind of those high frequency words, a list of high frequency words. The target is for the incoming kindergartners to be able to read 1 word, 8% of our students. So the students not showing up here were the students that had to have a secondary round. That's kindergarten.
And these are the children that are coming to us without any reading instruction.
Well, some of them are
From
preschool.
pre-K, yes.
Some of them are preschool, some of them
Right,
have
so
preschool.
this is done in the fall, so we're
Right.
just, we're just
This is
seeing
fresh
a lot of
This
these kids for the
yeah,
first
this was
time,
like-
yeah.
We were worried about the window because we have to have this completed within a certain amount of time. So we did this quickly. Going forward, would I assess kindergartners second week of school? Probably not. Maybe we would hold off on kindergartners, but we were worried about the time.
Did you happen to find if the proficient, the ones who were proficient came from preschool?
We haven't
You
dug
didn't look
into
at
that level
It's a
yet,
good-
but
it's a
I
good
was
question.
asking that question myself,
Yep.
and I just haven't had time to dig into that. But it would be neat to see.
Because their performance, that kindergarten performance is going to be very much dependent on what they've been exposed to in terms of alphabet, words,
Right.
language, prior to them
How many
coming. And
siblings?
Those preschool students
Well,
may have more exposure than the non-preschool students.
read aloud and conversation too. There's some big tie-in to how many read aloud to a student and their oral vocabulary. So then this is first grade. So all of the same measures are being assessed here, and then we add an oral reading fluency piece where they're reading a passage. And so we have an accuracy rate of how accurate did they read the words that they read. And then we have a words correct. So the accuracy is a percentage. And then how many words did they read correctly, not including the errors. So you might have somebody who reads really slow and they had 100% accuracy of what they read, but they only read 16 words. So that's why it's measuring those 2 areas. Second grade and third grade, you start at the other end, right? So you're starting with looking at reading fluency and comprehension. If they're low, then you back up and you assess some of those other measures that we talked about with first grade and kindergarten. And so oral reading fluency, again, accuracy versus words correct. And then the maze is the comprehension piece. This is where they read a passage, and every few words there's a box with 3 words in the box, and they have to choose which word would make sense. So then when we talked at Ed Programming, we were like, well, how does this compare over time? So, let's do third grade first. So third grade is the same measures as second grade, oral reading fluency first. And then over time, we can compare kindergarten cohorts. We can't compare first and second grade because, as I said before, in the past, we've only assessed those kids who are already showing that they may be at risk. But kindergarten, we assess every year at the beginning of the year. Granted, we didn't do it the second week of school. It was typically done in October or November. So this is from 2019 to 2023. We don't have a COVID lapse because it was done in the fall. And so fall of that year, we saw kindergartners, we were able to assess them. So you're looking at the same letter naming fluency all the way over, going to segmentation fluency here. Nonsense word, this is the correct letter sounds. This one is the word read correctly. Reading fluency.
So each of these bars represents a different kindergarten cohort.
Yes.
When did we start full day preschool in the district? Mary? Do you remember? It would be curious, as you're looking at the preschool questions, because we've got bumps, that might indicate there was some impact of increasing.
Yeah, and what percentage attended kindergarten, preschool in each
Mhm.
one of those cohorts would be an interesting.
And can we just state very explicitly here, so you do the first round of assessment for the delta between 100% of the student population and whatever percent tests out as meeting the standard, you're doing a second round of assessment? And how much time away from classroom instruction is that assessment process?
It's pretty significant right now. We, during the budgeting process, right, one of the things I had tasked myself with was, let's do some research on some of these other assessments that we could use that might have this built right in. Some of them have the secondary assessment built right in. So I wanted to look at kind of how successful are those in other districts. I put that on the back burner when we got news that there's been new legislation proposed where the state, if that one passes, the state will tell us the screener to use. So the reason I put it on the back burner is I don't want to switch to something next year, not be able to compare our information and then switch the following year. If the legislation passes the way it's proposed, it would be January of '25. They would determine what we're going to use for a measure. And so I haven't looked, but prior to that coming out, I was looking for something that would be for our teachers. The DIBELS went really quickly. We used our Title I team. We put them into both buildings. What we still have to do is out of district.
We have to take care of charter school.
Charter school. So we have to, I'm probably going to end up doing that so that we don't pull our teachers out of our classrooms. But DIBELS went really quickly, much quicker than we expected. The second round is more lengthy. One reason it's more lengthy though is our classroom teachers are doing a lot of that because it's going to give them the data they need for the instruction. But it's tricky and it's clunky this year. We didn't have a lot of time to get the organizational piece, so we're learning as we go. Second round of this. We haven't determined when. Typically, we would do a winter DIBELS in January, February. Here is the DESA data. So this is the SEL assessment. You had asked what domains. It assesses 8 domains: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, goal-directed behavior, personal responsibility, decision-making, and optimistic thinking. So it's like a rating scale that the teacher
It's an
fills out.
8-question rating scale with behavior or asking, have you observed this behavior in their strength-based language? And then the teacher rates students. Then the pieces are put together. Distribution across the district.
So the expected distribution would be that 16% would be in the need area, which is 68% in the blue area, which is typical, and 16% in the area.
So very much following a normal curve, nationally normed. And so our results are pretty close to that. Our students in need at 19%, higher than what the national district. 66% for students who are rated as showing typical developmentally appropriate. 15%
Question about DESA. In the fall, the teachers do the rating scales. They don't know the kids yet.
They've had them, I think it's done in October.
8 or 9 weeks.
Okay, okay.
And you know the items that they're reading, the observations that would typically be seen within
And so here we have the longitudinal data, so we're looking at fall of last year. Again, the pink is the need, blue is typical,
And this is the whole district, kindergarten through 8th grade distribution.
Correct. So this cohort is gonna be slightly, this fall 2003 is gonna be slightly different than last year's. Brought some kindergartners in and moved some.
All right, so then action steps, right? So we know the data is showing us our kids are not where we want them to be. We need to make some. And here's what we're looking at. So each school is working to create a school action plan where they're going to already set building goals and develop action steps that are building based. This literacy screening data that we use, this is being used to inform Tier 1 instruction intervention so that we can better target our skills. We're working to develop the required intervention plans. Part of the legislation is that there needs to be an intervention after the secondary assessment showed that they're at risk. So we're working on that now. Researching math screening tools. Are there tools that we can use to help us similarly to the literacy piece? But here we have a bit more time to be strategic and find something that's going to be efficient and still give us the information about what skills do we need to target when and how do we target them to get that accelerated growth. More strategic use of the New Hampshire SAS modular and intern assessment. What we didn't talk about when we talked about New Hampshire SAS is it is a bear of a test. The kids struggle because it's very long. You're doing 2 or 3, or really, because the ELA is broken into a reading test and a writing test. Then you have the math test, and if you're in 5th, 8th, or 11th grade, you have the science test, all done within a couple of weeks. They're long, and so they're not as familiar. So there are modulars and interns that we can utilize throughout the school year for kids to practice and then have feedback so that they can develop the skills for answering those kinds of questions.
And what type of program are you going to implement to evaluate the action plan, the time frame? Like, what do you have in mind?
Evelyn, we're going to, when we update our strategic plan, right in the strategic plan, we're gonna have every school's action plan with timelines and goals. So you'll see specifically what each grade, and it's gonna align with the data you just saw.
Okay.
What they're gonna do, who's gonna do it, what's the timeline, and what.
When you expect to see?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll also add, Angie and I were talking again today about the need to continually come back to ed program with updates. Here's what else we found when we dug into the data deeper. Here's what question that answers poses, but where are we also with the action steps? 2 other
Yeah, we have
pages with some additional pieces as well.
I think the part about getting kids practice with the site so that it's not as overwhelming, and then having that opportunity for feedback so that they can look at, oh, look, this piece of writing scored 2. All I'm missing is X. If I had X, it would be a 3, which is perfect. And just giving the kids some of that information so that they can see it, play with it, revise, edit, maybe build their confidence a little bit.
Interestingly, we do that, we encourage that with the SAT. Students to prepare, become familiar with the test, practice the items. This is the same thing. We have the ability to introduce the test environment, the structure of the test to students throughout the course of the year so that they do come to May. It's familiar, before, they've gotten feedback, they know how it's structured, and we build ourselves a little bit of an edge.
Say May, I just want to caveat that this year there's a change in the writing assessment. So new prompts are being used. They've introduced a new, we're teaching narrative, but it was never assessed on the state assessment anymore, and now it is one of the items. So when it comes to the writing assessment, a student gets one writing prompt, and it's kind of random whether they get opinion or argument. Now it will be narrative. And because of the change, they're going to be hand scored this year to help computer for next year. So the test is going to be given in March. So it's going to be given the writing test only. It's going to be given earlier than typical. That doesn't work in our favor. The action steps, we've got to be mindful of that and making sure that we get.
One other piece with that last one, we also should probably add the word intentional, not just strategic, but intentional. Those modules and those interims have been available to us all along. Intentionality at which they is something that needs to increase.
It's going to be a non-negotiable. Principals are gonna set windows of when the teachers need to give the returns.
Thank you. I say intentionality and the superintendent says
Non-negotiable.
non-negotiable. Now we've got it right.
So another piece to this is continuing work collaborative planning. We need to build on each other's strengths. And to get there, we need to look at common formative assessments. We need to analyze that data. Ooh, this group of kids did well here. How do we help this group of kids do well there as well? Really looking at that data. Focusing on the data review to inform the instruction and the intervention, and then getting back to the standards-based instructional design, as we talked about. When we were looking at that data today, we were just in one grade level, and it's clear that there needs to be some supplement there because what the program is asking isn't at the same level as what New Hampshire's asking. We've got to dive in a little deeper. We've got to give the teachers some resources so that they can get that. And beginning a curriculum review process, which I'm really anxious to get started, but with testing, I haven't get there yet. But identifying the areas of strength and challenge, which we have started. So we've gotten there, it's not formal. Then focusing our instructional alignment between those standards, which is what I was just talking about. So it is happening. I guess I feel better now, but I just don't feel like I've done as much as I wanted to. And then conducting an audit of tier 2 and tier 3 interventions for those students with IEPs so that we can create that accelerated growth. What do we have?
What do we have? Who's trained to administer it in terms of those interventions? Some of them are highly scripted, in specific ways, and when we do that, we can expect that our growth is going to be stronger. What do we have? Who's trained to use them? What do we need? Because we know that a one-size-fits-all intervention is not realistic. 2 interventions, probably still not realistic. I'd like to see what is it that we may need in order to help move our most challenged learners to continue to create that growth, but to begin to close that proficiency gap. Those are challenging tasks, but with the right interventions and trained folks who are implementing them, I think we can create some positive change.
We're reaching out for some help. So we've got access to a couple of consultants who are going to give us. Both of these consultants are of the belief that it's not the program or the book that you put in front. It's the whole picture. It's looking at how do we strengthen our teachers? How do we give them the resources they need and the supports they need to support the students? And doing that, we've got VMI, so Vermont Math Initiative. We had hoped to work with them a couple of years ago. They didn't have the staffing because of COVID. And so they're ready at this point to get that started. So we're building a math instructional team. Right now we're in the very beginning stages. We've asked for people who are interested to so we're gonna meet with the consultant, she's gonna kind of talk to us about her vision, our vision. Then people will decide, do I wanna hang out on this committee and do this work? Not a committee, a math instructional team. So that we have the teachers who are in this every day, making some decisions on how to get the word. And then CSS Consulting is literacy instruction, and they specialize in evidence-based practices. They're not gonna back a program, they're gonna tell you the good parts about all the programs. So whatever you've got in your school, whatever you've already got access to, they're gonna tell you how to use it. And focusing on how the brain works. I took a team to Freeport last week, it was supposed to happen in October, got postponed, and we went last week, and we were up and moving. They were showing us movements that help get the brain activated. It's not just about the delivery of the content, but it's about helping the students get themselves ready, showing them how to do that. So this is going to be helpful. That is the last slide.
Thank you.
Yeah. Comprehensive.
I think one of the things that really struck me
Scary.
during the ed programming meeting was that this is the kind of work that our educators do regularly, assessing students, looking for their opportunities, their strengths, their weaknesses, and targeting instruction to help students be successful that oftentimes isn't seen by the public. And I think it's really helpful that you were able to demonstrate some of those pieces through the presentation. We all think we know what school looks like because we've all been to school, but it's not the same as being a teacher at the head of the classroom. And there's a lot that goes into that. The level of assessment that's happening and the thoughtfulness about what to do with that data, we're hearing regularly in ed programming in different subject areas, and it's a piece of the educational process that I think is not always as obvious.
But important.
Essential.
Yeah.
This is what teachers do.
Right.
Yeah, it's essential.
I would just really would want to add, I mean, I know that we want to make like careful, deliberate, strategic decisions. But when we look at those middle school grades, I think we also need to have a sense of real urgency. And so I'm encouraged because, you know, it seems like, although in previous years, we've also seen some less than desired outcomes for our performance data, this year, it seems like we're really making an effort, a concentrated effort to address it. So I'm happy to see that. But I did really want to stress that no matter what we do, we need to get those middle school grades to a point where they're able to reach the high school and perform here. I mean, that those patterns we're seeing are just going to perpetuate because the numbers are so low in those, you know, 5th, 6th, 7th grade. So I know that you all know that, but I just really want to, I think, state that publicly that we know it's something that really has to be addressed, and I'm encouraged that it's
A
being
comment we
addressed.
discussed today is that if we can strengthen those 5th, 6th grade, what would middle school be?
Right.
Mathematically,
Right.
You know, the heights that they
Sure.
can reach. We're not doing recovery. We're building on a much solid, deeper
Right.
foundation at that point.
Right.
So, I think I can speak for Angie and say that our dig into the data is not done.
Yeah. There's a lot to it. Yeah.
On Wednesday morning, the three of us additional special education data and digging there. And as more data comes in, as we're moving through the school year, I want to take a look at how does that sit with what the baseline is. And I'd like to be able to come back to ed programming committee. Here's what we found. This is interesting. We want to report this out.
That would be very welcome.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And while while we're discussing it, we have Cheryl and Scott here too, and you know, these areas of concern with middle school. You know, if there's something you would like to add to this, I mean, it would be a good opportunity. not to put you on the spot, but, but I mean, we're talking about your kids at your school, so if you have something to add, I'd love to hear it.
I can speak to what we're doing in Lancaster, with the math portion of it. We're looking at the state assessments. You mind if I sit down?
Yeah, please, yeah.
We're looking at the state standards, and the state's released all of this information on the number of questions that are asked based on categories or strands, and has all the standards in there. So we know that some of the math standards, there's questions that are gonna be in the range that are gonna be asked. The standards are gonna be 44 to 46 or 48%. That's gonna be the test. So why not address those standards with the students? And looking at that, and they mentioned depth of knowledge questions. How are we asking those questions? How are we addressing those? And so that information is there. Have we used it in the past? No. They released it, they updated it in 2018 or 2019, and then you think about what's happened between now and then.
Right.
But that information is there, so why not access that, leverage that, when we're working with students, address those standards.
But I think this is the first year that they've actually released questions that they asked in the test last year. I think this is, right, this is release items from last year?
Just for the writing.
Just for the
Okay.
writing,
Yeah.
they're revamping it.
Yep, so all of their prompts, they made new prompts this year for the writing assessments.
Oh, okay.
So the prompts that they had last year, they have now moved those to the interim and modular assessments. We realize that's a huge concern for us when we see those dips like that. When we're reporting under 10% proficiency, there's a real urgency. You spoke to it,
Yeah.
and we're all seeing that.
Yeah.
Concern. The big thing is the teachers aren't folding in on themselves. They're not
Mhm.
saying I quit. They're not saying I leave.
Right.
They
like, how do
are
we address
digging-
it?
They're
Yeah.
digging into this information to say, how can I go about addressing these standards, maybe in a different way than what our 5th and 6th grade programs are? Because they've been teaching those programs with fidelity. Is it working? Well, I mean, something's not working,
Right.
but that's what they're digging into. So
Okay.
it's good work.
Yeah.
We're encouraged by the teachers. They're leading it. They're asking for, how can we find more time in the schedule to meet so we can do this, so we're not doing this work at 5 or 6 o'clock at night.
Right.
How can you support us in that? It's good work. It's hard work.
Yeah.
It's hard work. And when you're the teacher and you're seeing that data, right, you're working with kids every day. And we've been talking about this since the beginning of October. They've been seeing this data numerous times, and they're gonna see it again if someone watched tonight or in the newspaper. The newspaper's gonna pick some of this up. They
Right.
will, right? They're gonna publish this and say, look at the math data at Lancaster, or SAE 36 and 56 grade, there's a problem. They're gonna see it again, but they're not being discouraged by it. They're continuing to work through it, which is
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've taken, as a staff, Mike and Angie came to the school, gave the same presentation, and so we have followed that up with digging into the data at the building level, and then also digging into our student level. So really, trying to crunch those numbers, try to find where where we need to focus our core instruction versus where we need to support tier 2, where we need to support tier 3. So we're still digging into that, putting our plan together. And our teachers are, as Scott said, they dig into the data, they take it seriously, they take it to heart. They've left, in looking at some of those scores, and they take that very personally. So, yeah, they're digging in and they're working hard.
Great. Well, thank you really for all of you who worked on the presentation and administration and our instructors.
And for supporting the teachers, yeah.
I think we as a board just want to support and improve this.
One last thing in my report is good news. The bus company has 2 more routes going out. A twin
Saw
route
the
and a
email
Jefferson
today,
route.
yeah.
Oh, wow, a Jefferson route, that was the longest, wasn't it?
Twin was, one of the routes is reducing the time by 40 minutes. It's getting
That's
slow.
the Twin Mountain
Twin
route,
Mountain Route, yeah.
because before they were
40
delivering
minutes.
Whitefield, then going to Twin and drop. Twin will have a dedicated bus the Monday we come back from Thanksgiving. And then they are waiting on a driver to take their tests with the DMV. They've passed everything else, including the dreaded background check that can take up to 6 weeks. And their hope is to have that route by the time we return from winter break, which will alleviate how long kids are on the bus in Jefferson.
They posted it today.
Oh, yeah, Jeremy did. Jeremy did. Good. So that's good news. We, Melissa, Rob and I met with them. Your turn.
That's good news.
Yes.
Alrighty, hey, before we get into a couple controversial topics, just wanted to highlight Chef and some of his kids. I don't know if you saw a posting on the Fruit Sellers Facebook page, but a pretty cool collaborative project, farm to table, literally pumpkins out of the field. Mr. Craxton brought them up. Taught Chef a little bit about the pumpkin variety. It was a very unique one. I'm a pumpkin grower and I've never seen it. And then the kids researched how they had to get the moisture level just right in the puree to make the pie the right consistency. They ended up baking off, I think it was 42 pies for Project Homebound. The Polish Princess Magda donated the boxes, so it was a huge, community collaborative effort to help out Project Homebound. And we had 4 or 5 kids stay after school at Chef 5 days in a row to make sure that pie process was followed to a T, because it is difficult to take a pumpkin and make it into a pie. It was a great opportunity and learning experience.
So that really was amazing. I had talked to Melissa Grella, so I kind of knew what was going on in the background, but to see it today or yesterday, I forget.
Did anybody
Social media
taste
was
them?
great.
Families in need are gonna taste them on Thursday.
Yeah.
So,
If I could just piggyback on that, Rob, I had the opportunity to host an experiential learning event for medical students from Geisel School of Medicine and physician assistant students from Franklin Pierce University on the weekend of the 27th and 28th of October. And we were super excited to have Spartan Culinary and Hospitality cater for our event as well. They were able to meet a wide range of dietary needs and restrictions easily, and left a just fantastic impression on the folks who participated in that event. Not only the scholars that were visiting the North Country, but we also invited a number of local healthcare providers to sit in with us on those meals as well. And what was really wonderful is that both Chef and Ms. Whiting were able to speak to the work of CTE in terms of preparing kids to be career and school ready, should they choose to go on to another school after high school. They spoke about the types of learning that students did in their classes, and the level of engagement they have at state, regional, and national levels with the program. It was a beautiful opportunity for our CTE program to shine. And also the caramel apples were pretty. But it was really a wonderful chance for them to partner in community. They brought out the mobile kitchen. It's pretty impressive if you haven't eaten from the mobile kitchen. And we're well represented by students serving that night as well on a Saturday. So the team there is pretty.
If I could just interrupt. Giles, if you're uncomfortable at all, I should have said it earlier, you're more than welcome to be excused.
Okay.
All right? I can only imagine. I looked over and I said,
Holding
the
on. to
kid's
it.
suffering.
Yeah, I might head out. If that's all right. But thank you.
Feel better.
Yeah. Every day is a little bit better than the last. So.
That's good.
But okay,
And
thank
have a
you
good
guys.
Thanksgiving.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
guys.
You too.
Okay,
There you
so
go.
Bye, guys. Have a good night. Have a good Thanksgiving.
I was trying to delay
Yeah.
a little bit. All right, so the first official item on my report section is a rough draft proposal for the school year calendar for 24-25. Keep in mind, this is just a discussion draft. You folks will be presented with a final draft for approval in December. But we talked a little bit about this at the last board meeting. Herb, I know you weren't there, Tara. You weren't able to make it, and Kristen, you weren't there. So it's important that we discuss it again today and the reasons why we're putting forward this proposal. But recent legislation has asked regional CTE centers to align their calendars with the sending schools. So all schools within Region 3, under the state law, have to align their calendars and be no more than 10 days in misalignment. So within our region, we have the Northumberland School District, SAU 58. We have Littleton, which is SAU 84. We have the Profile School District, which is they call it the White Mountain District. SAU 35. And then we have Linwood. Haverhill is not part of our region. So we were the last school that attended
Bless you.
their first day after Labor Day. So in a potential situation, before school even begins for the first day, like this upcoming year, Littleton is scheduled to have 4 days in before Labor Day. So we have the 4 days before we start, and then on the tail end, they get out 4 days before us. So before the school year even starts, we're at 8 days of misalignment. Then you factor in one school district may have a snow day where the other one doesn't, or a testing day that's different. You know, we have different SAT testing days that we ask not to receive CTE kids. So then you quickly get to or exceed the 10 number. So what this proposal here, or this draft, I met with all the regional superintendents and principals. We've aligned our professional development days, so that comes out of play. For the most part, our October day was always aligned, but the March one was never truly aligned. Our vacations are all 100% aligned and based off of this Department of Education's recommended vacation schedule. And that's developed in consideration with what the Massachusetts school vacation weeks are. But the vacations are highlighted. I call it yellow. I'm colorblind. You call it what you want. Okay. You can see the 2 PD days. Is that a dark blue?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then is that green or orange?
Green.
Green, okay. I highlighted those because those were the days that we proposed that we would have students in. We have not put in any of the early release or staff days, but wanted to have the discussion about where we're at, because last board meeting, you know, there was 4 members.
3 to 1.
3 to 1, to consider the conversation. Again, this is not, we're not asking you to vote on this tonight. We're here to have you air your concerns.
We need a sense though, because in
Yeah.
December we need to
Right.
vote
I have
on
a
a calendar.
question. Was there any, I mean, I am in a lot of ways traditionalist, and I think it's abhorrent for any kid to go to school in the month of August. Like, it just doesn't work in my brain, but you know, it's always tradition. It's Lancaster Fair, it's the last hurrah, and then you start school. And I understand things change. I get it. But was there any sense from the other school districts that they could start later and align with us, or would, like, why? Like, I'm just
So-
asking.
In the past, that discussions happened.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we're our own district, we can do what we want, but that's their tradition.
Right, right.
And you said we're the last ones
Yeah.
that start after Labor Day. My question is, what would the consequences be if we exceeded the 10 days?
The state doesn't have defined in the law what the consequence would be. We wanna,
Yeah.
if
I
we
mean,
wanna find out,
Yeah.
you know, I
Right.
can definitely put a call into Jeff Baird, who's the state director, and pose the question, what would happen?
Yeah.
But I, you know, from my perspective, you know, thinking about the kids in our programs, we hold up true learning in CTE until our kids get there. So the kids from all the other schools go to health science those 4 days, and the instructors don't actually start teaching because they know we're coming late. So, you know, we hold up kids, or there are instances where, you know, they need to get going and our kids have to
Are
get caught
behind.
up, right? Then on the tail end, you know, our kids aren't getting the whole 180-day gamut of CTE, nor are the sending kids. You know, so from my perspective, that's one thing to consider.
Well, we already know what the community thinks about it. Every time we talk about this.
This doesn't, is not a conflict with Because they close now. They reopen on Friday.
Okay.
But it is just a conflict one day with the Lancaster Fair, the 29th, which if kids need to go show animals or plants or whatever, we would let them do that.
Would it, I mean, would it make, or I don't know if this could be possible that the CTE kids could just start earlier?
Because the
Oh, 'cause
kids from the
they-
other,
Busing and all
schools,
that.
Yeah.
they're coming here.
You know, I think, I hear your concern about the fair, but
Well,
when
I
we were
mean-
kids, it started on Tuesday, or even Monday, no, Tuesday to Monday, and now the fair kicks off at Thursday
29th, I
morning.
think. 29th, yeah.
Doesn't mean that families aren't setting up at the fairgrounds the day before, or whatever those things are. I would also say we've seen the number of exhibitors drop away at the fair as well, so where it
It's
used to
not
be,
what it used to be.
30
yeah.
years ago, everybody was there and they were there all week long, and we have some families in the region who absolutely are still solidly supportive of the fair circuit and strong participants that bring their skills right back here to the CTE programs too in some cases. But it's not the majority anymore. It's not the majority of the week in terms of time, and it's not the majority of families like it used to be. And if we've gotten to a place where Santa's Village, which was the other really strong
Right.
objection was that because it's workforce that they're relying on, if we've gotten to a place where we can align with them as well, then it sort of feels like the writing's on the wall. And we're
I mean, at the end of the
fighting
day,
over
it's what's
that.
best, you know, for
Yeah.
the kids.
And
Do you
I'm
have
all
a
about that,
rough
but
idea
I
or an
still-
estimate, how many CTE kids are we talking about? Like, what's the total?
We receive, this year, we received, I think it's 26 and we send 24.
And what has anybody else heard, like, from feedback from the community?
Hasn't been.
I don't think it's out
Yeah, I
there
don't think
really.
it's really out there yet.
I'd be interested to hear that, but, I mean, at the end of the day.
We are proposing August 30th as a
That's a day
Yeah.
off.
as a day
Yeah.
off.
4-day weekend.
So it'll be a
Yeah.
4-day weekend.
Yeah, so I mean, that kind of mitigates a little bit of fair overlap. 'cause people-
One day.
I mean, I
It's
agree
like
with
it's
you too,
August
but
still, it's like it's summer.
I know, that it was,
But I get, I mean, it's
Yeah.
three,
On the other
Where-
hand, we're also
where I grew up,
ending
it was the
earlier in
same.
June.
Yeah.
Our grad date this year is the 7th, is that right? When we graduated, it was the 17th, so
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
2 weeks
And with the
earlier
third-
in the summer.
Well, you
13th
get out
being
a lot
last day of
earlier.
school, is that right?
Yeah,
13th,
13th would be the
Yeah.
last.
last day of school.
I don't
Which
know,
is nice.
yeah, I definitely think, you know, at the end of the day, obviously, it's best for the kids, but I'm still curious to see what the community.
Well, as history tells, they'll be here at the next meeting.
Change
If
is
we
hard, I get it.
hard. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, I get it, but you know, sometimes it's necessary, sometimes it's not.
Yeah, if it works for the kids, like you said, that's really what our focus is, right?
Well, and we've spent an awful lot of time tonight looking at a presentation that's about making sure that we have rigorous instruction, making sure that we're well aligned with scope and sequence of curriculum, and to hear that our CTE programming, not just in this district, but across the region, is essentially on hold for the first week because of misalignment it feels really unacceptable to me from an academic rigor standpoint.
I mean, I can develop a quick poll. Or we just wait for them to show up.
Yeah.
I'm sure Paul will put something in the paper.
Yeah, sure. And our community's been good about showing up when they have concerns about something like the calendar, and, you know, here's the open invitation that there's public input at every single meeting.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's
And
pros
we
and
all are
cons of
publicly
everything.
noticed
Yeah.
as board members to be in
Yeah.
touch with us.
Hey, for everybody that wants to stick with tradition, there's gonna be that number of people, but there's also gonna be an equal amount that are gonna be happy that they can leave or go on to the summer home or on the 14th instead of the
Right.
20th. So, there's always gonna be some that are
Oh,
happy
yeah,
that
we,
we're
yeah,
ending it earlier and some that are.
Didn't we
many
talk
things
about
are.
this in Dalton 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure it was in the
And-
newspaper then,
right, and
and we
nobody's
aren't
here yet.
overrun tonight.
Right, that's true
So,
too. It was at the
I
Dalton.
feel
meeting.
like,
people already have
We're
a
kind
chance
of-
to.
well, and absolutely come in December, but I feel like, you know, we had this discussion. I know you guys couldn't be there,
No.
but we've been through this, so they're not lined up here because they're upset about that.
Right.
And you know, we talked to Rob and Marion and asked what their recommendations were, because they're our boots on the ground.
Right.
And they both recommended the change. So, I mean, it was a pretty straightforward discussion that we had in Dalton.
Well, I'm happy to be a part of it right now, because I know that there's a significant amount of people who would be, you know, to have concerns about it, but, you know, so I just wanna say that there are people that should be upset about it.
But are they upset about it because it always has been, or traditionally?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's hard, is because
Change
change is hard.
Change is
And
hard.
so
Well-
I'm not saying that it's not the right thing to do, I'm saying that change is hard, and
It sounds like,
Well, I think
sounds like-
educationally, go ahead, Herb, sorry.
I was just to say, we always talk about communication, and it just sounds like it comes down to us as a district communicating, this is why we think we have to do this. And I think the reason is
Yeah.
compelling, I mean, I don't love it, I mean, but I think I can support it.
Same, I don't love it, but I could support it.
Yeah,
'cause, I
it
mean,
just
I get
goes-
it.
Once again, to Concord, making a law that we have to follow, why don't they just have a calendar come out of Concord, say, this is when school can
This is the
start,
school
and this
year,
is when
yeah.
school ends across the state. I don't know,
Well, I'm sure if they did, it would be before Labor Day. Just because
not if the governor had
we
his
were
way.
in the minority.
No, the governor doesn't like it.
It's also worth noting that this is about the worst case scenario in terms of the number of days in the month of August that we would be in school. Because Labor Day is always gonna be the first Monday in September,
And this
right?
is
And
the
this is on the
late- yeah.
second. And so if you look at like the best case scenario of no days in August, it would be if Labor Day was like
You think of Labor Day as being
And
the
you,
6th,
so
7th.
in the years when Labor Day comes late on the 7th, we've got a whole week of September that they're not in school too, so it rotates and some years feel worse
Yeah.
than others. This is the worst case
Well,
scenario.
I still wish the Lancaster Elementary School was where the courthouse is, so. That's how far I go back. But I,
Students do that
Can we move
already.
on?
Can I, just one quick fall athletic. Starting a week early with the kids here, because they think it's preseason. Hurting cats because they're not organized,
But, I mean,
and they're in and out, and
It's a
it's
good
just
point,
the
too.
first 2 weeks.
yeah.
It'll align
It's not
athletics
as
better.
productive as it could be.
Thanks,
Mhm.
Mike.
Yeah.
All right,
True.
we'll bring a finalized calendar for your approval at the December.
Is that April vacation, right, Rob? That's what everybody agreed on, into May?
The state,
And
the
that's what the
state
state,
asked
so
us to do that.
we originally had ours set for April 21 through 25.
Which is what I would think typically.
Yeah. And then when I went to that regional meeting, they're like, no, look at the DOE recommended vacation week, and the DOE recommended that week. Therefore, all the school districts were on that week.
Okay, thank you.
April
will be.
Yeah, February to that break is gonna be a long haul. Alrighty, more to come in December. Okay, the second thing I passed around to you folks is at the facilities level, we had a discussion, and you can read all the notes about it in the facilities committee notes. But basically, the paving infrastructure in our school district is just getting worse and worse, and it's costing us a lot of money to even maintain the gravel that we put down as a temporary fix. We're grading it on a regular basis. We're having to put chloride down anytime you have any dry weather. Whitefield School, just last week, they had to cut out a section and put in a temporary patch because it was creating a pretty big hole. We're replacing the cutting edges on our plows on a regular basis, more so than we should be, because they're just getting beat up. So the discussion was around, should we take a look at a potential bond to address paving district-wide and get it done? So at the facilities level, we agreed that I would work with Melissa to reach out to the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank, figure out what the rates would be for a 15-year and 20-year based off of two numbers of 1.3 million and 1.5 million. And those numbers are impacted by how much of the capital reserve we would use to support the project. So you can see the scheduled bond payments on this sheet. And then these sheets are correlated in order from top to bottom with what the tax impact would be if we were to go to bond. And this is just a discussion if we want to consider this as a warrant article for this year. On a 15-year bond for 1.3 million, that would include us using 300,000 of our capital reserve. These numbers would be more firm for you at the next board meeting because the paving estimates are being updated. I should have them by Monday. But you're looking at a tax impact to Carroll. And keep in mind, this is the first full year of bond payment. If you look at the schedule, the first year is kind of a half payment, the way the bond schedule works. And then year 2 is the first year you have a full bond payment. Then as we pay on a bond, the tax impact actually goes down a little bit after a few years because you've paid off more of the principal. But the highest year, it would be a 4-cent impact on Carroll, a 10-cent impact on Dalton, 11-cent impact on Jefferson, 19 cents on Lancaster, and 16 cents on Whitefield. For a 20-year bond on 1.3 million, again, 4 cents, 8 cents, 9 cents, 16 cents, 14 cents. Then if we had to bond 1.5 million, you know, if the estimate goes up, over 15 years, 5 cents, 11, 12, 21, 19. And then 20-year bond on 1.5 million would be 4 cents, 10 cents, 11 cents, 19 cents, 16 cents. One of the things we discussed, we know we're going through this capital plan development. But it is, the road is getting bad and we know what the outcome of that assessment is going to be. So the budget numbers include milling everything, removing the boulders that exist, replacing culverts, improving manholes. There's like one in Lancaster back by the preschool door that's sinking. We would restabilize that, fill in around it. What's that?
I think it has to be done.
So
Not gonna get
Well,
cheaper.
that's what we talked about in the meeting, is that it's not just, even though this one probably is the one at the head of everybody's mind because they drive over it, you know, all three of them are
Yeah.
in need of serious work, and it's not gonna get any more cost effective to wait. I mean,
No.
we can't keep patching them and expect that it's going to miraculously get better, or it's gonna get cheaper to take care of. We just, at some point, we've gotta say, okay, this is where we're gonna draw the line. We need to take the bond and fix it.
I think we've done a tremendous amount of capital improvements without having to raise bond money.
Yeah, I mean,
We're at that point.
for years we talked and worried about the roofs. You know, that we were going to have to
And
bond for
they're done.
those, so
Yeah.
and they're done. without
we
having
got
to-
2 left here, but the capital reserve is almost in a place to
Yeah.
get those done.
You may have already done this, but the two thoughts that come to mind for me are, first, is there any kind of grant opportunity related to environmental improvements or anything like that?
If
that
we
could
were to get the
potentially leverage?
towns to take over the roads, we would be eligible for a lot more. But because we're the owners of them, we miss out on all the municipal grant incentives.
Can we sell them the road?
I mean, is it worth entering into those conversations with the towns to, you know, the reality is Whitefield and Lancaster are gonna feel the heaviest tax impact anyway.
Yeah.
And so is there, do we have the time? We know this is coming. I'm with you, Ben. We've been talking about it forever. But it feels like before we take $1.5 million to the taxpayers as a bond, it might be worthwhile to think about that conversation with the towns. The other thought I had is, I know in some cases in construction projects I've been tangential to, there's been an opportunity to reuse materials. And I don't know if that's a thing that can happen with our roads or not.
Yep, so
Big
they would
brush.
mill it, some of it would be left behind for the final grade. And part of this is they would do a 3-inch coarse layer. So you have 3 inches of coarse material that would set for a couple weeks, and then they come back with 1.5 inch finer layer and do a second coat on it. We would have a mountain of millings that could be used for a multitude of projects. We have the space down in our maintenance area to store them. You know, if we're looking to do something with the athletic field and expand even more, that could become a base layer. We could use those millings on our roads down to the Sugar Bush to help keep the water down below the tractor. There's a lot we could do with those millings.
Not necessarily use them in the roads themselves.
They would, like I said, they would use some of them,
Some.
but yeah. If we solely relied on the millings in the road, we're back to grading them on a regular basis.
So should we initiate contact with the towns? Just, what would be the loss for the towns to do this?
They then become the agents of the roads and they're responsible for maintaining and plowing.
They're not gonna.
So how much would that cost them? I mean, maybe there's something.
Different towns, different amount.
But I mean, maybe there's some way we can work with them on that.
And I think the downside risk side of working with the municipality is ideally, right, it would open the door to grants that could potentially
Right,
help with
Right.
maintenance, but if they don't get the grants, the roads are still there and needing to be maintained.
If
And
I'm not
Whitefield will,
mistaken, I'm
you
sorry.
gotta remember Whitefield's gonna handle two of those.
If I'm not mistaken, the district is a municipality in itself.
Right, but it's the town municipality.
That can only
Yeah.
get grants.
I reached out to Amy Clark, she's the civil engineer that
Yeah.
is assigned to the Department of Ed.
Yeah.
Said it's the age-old problem for school
Yeah,
districts.
and I can't imagine where, if we bond it, we got 5 towns that are paying for it, whereas if we ask the towns to do it, we only get 2, Whitefield and Lancaster.
Either or, right, like the roads in Whitefield
Right.
for West and the regional would hit the Whitefield budget. It just seems too bad to lose the opportunity to grant money.
In you know, we talked about that some, but we also talked about how if we're gonna do it, we need to be on, cause it's gotta be ready for budget season. We're gonna start here next month, moving forward with that. So I hear what you're saying, but that will put us back another year.
Yeah, that's it, that's,
And I don't know about anybody else, but I mean, you drive to Whitefield, you drive, they're just gonna get worse.
So we have the information, it's not much more work right now to create a warrant article. And then we'll have more precise numbers. We'll present it to you when we present the budget. And that would be an opportunity for the board to say, yes, we want to keep this warrant article on the warrant and, support it or. Yeah. Barbara Lohman was great when we did the CTE bond. Alrighty,
Thank you.
more information to come.
thank you.
That's the end of my report, folks.
Thank you. Director of Finance, anything to add, Melissa?
No.
Or any
We'll reach
questions
out
from
to the
Melissa?
attorney. We're going with that.
School Board Committee reports, Ed program curriculum. Would
You
you
had
like to
it
add anything
tonight.
else?
That's really been the focus of our last couple of meetings and will continue to circle back to us.
And manage your facilities is the same?
Facilities, yeah, I mean, there was some
There was
other stuff in there, just, HVAC stuff at Whitefield. Lighting system up here, have you made any?
Yeah, they're gonna come in over Christmas break, do some testing and some temporary stuff, but we are potentially looking at a full replacement again here at the high school at zero cost to the school district. The system is not operating as it should, and it's interfering with instruction.
We talked about playgrounds. Lancaster is.
Is ready to have a ribbon cutting ceremony on Monday, Scott.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Right.
Allows that to happen.
That's great.
For a long time coming.
Whitefields is, Whitefields is earmarked for April vacation.
And let me just talk about a couple other things. Athletics fields, budget requests for next year.
Next is personnel. The negotiations are continuing, and I'm optimistic that we may come to you with the contract by the second week in December. And policy.
Policy, we have a change to a policy, use of the facilities.
There was discussion, I guess. Somebody wanna, or you wanna wait till the action agenda?
We can
Well,
wait till the
it's-
action agenda.
Okay, I mean, all right, because I can speak to it just a little bit, but I think the goal is to just keep, well, we can speak to it.
District wellness.
We had a facilitators meeting the week of December 8th, I think, is that right? So the committees are reconvened and back at it for the year, making good headway kind of all the way around, and we're gonna be meeting, I think, quarterly, facilitators.
Thank you. We heard about the 7/8 Advisory Committee.
Discuss that now.
Wanted, oh,
Well, I think
yeah,
Herb had.
yeah, so there was some questions.
Yeah, I just.
Oh, about,
Yeah, so the last two recommendations were about retaining the committee,
Right.
and sort of keeping that, on ice for now, but, bringing that back each year, I guess, it sounds like. Yeah, and I'm just questioning, do we need to do that or not? It seems to me like, as a board, we probably have most of the information we need, and what will change over the years will just be enrollment, finances. But, I mean, I can be convinced either way, I just wanted to question it.
I understand what you're saying with that, and I think as long as if we do disband it, as long as we keep the lines. All be the same.
I think it makes sense to look at the data on an annual basis, and aligning it with beginning of year data feels logical, because we have seen some changes in projected enrollment.
Right.
And the projected enrollment is going to impact the timing of a shift. The ad hoc committee, holding the ad hoc committee out, keeping those folks on the hook for coming back once a year feels like an unusual and burdensome ask for that committee. It makes more sense to me that we would thank them very much for their time and efforts and bring this particular committee to a close, and then on an annual basis, maybe it's a new convening. But we've got beautiful structure that's been created by this committee in terms of what to look at. The surveys that have been created are somewhat timeless in terms of the questions that are asked and could be reused from one year to the next without needing a bunch of nuanced finessing. And so they've done a really nice job building an assessment process, as it were, that could be revisited on an annual basis without having to do a whole bunch more rework. And there's nothing that would stop us on an annual basis from saying, look, we're looking for building leadership team involvement. We're looking for community members. Could we have 5 community members for this one-time reassessment kind of group, rather than leaving it out as a dangling unfinished business for 11 of the 12 months of the year.
Do we have access to that data? I mean, is the chair an employee, or is the chair a board member?
The chair is Scott Holmes.
Okay, so.
And on the website, you'll see a link to the survey sheet.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all
It's
the
all
raw
out there.
data,
It's all
there's
public.
nothing, it's
Okay.
very
Right.
transparent.
So we don't risk losing, and that, my worry would be we
No.
risk losing that,
We have a
I would-
drive from the very beginning.
Yeah,
now,
I
yeah.
would, if it were
Much like we
facility,
did
I'd
for
say
the-
institutional knowledge, but it's,
Yeah,
there's
it's
there's
there.
enough people that have been involved that we don't have
And,
to.
and, that drive can be put into, we have like a shared drive, an internal centralized shared drive. Always be able to get to.
It's much like the work we did on the apportionment committee, Ben. It's all still there. That drive is still there. We can
Yep.
still tap back to the data.
The lots and lots of data we
Yeah.
Well, Scott, not to put you on the spot again, but do you feel it would be okay to do what we're talking about and just disband the committee, or do you see some reason that it should be kept around?
I think that the reason why I know the reason why we made those recommendations is because as a committee, we feel that a 7-8 program in one building in this district is gonna be beneficial. And we see the need for that coming sooner than later.
Right.
The piece that Dr. Anastasia mentioned earlier is looking at enrollment. Feedback we got is if you're gonna do this, make it a central location. We know that's, the central location is here.
Right.
When is that feasible? And when are we not gonna take away opportunities for the high school students by moving middle school students up here? So that's the recommendation of continuing to look
Right.
at that enrollment. We're not saying that we don't recommend that we do this, but
Sure, yeah.
when do we recommend that we do that? If there was a huge drop, say in 2 years of 100 students that we didn't know, that might be the time to do it.
Right.
But we don't wanna recommend doing that to take away opportunities for high school students. We think the high school's providing a tremendous amount of opportunities for kids in the North Country. We don't wanna impede that.
One of the things we could consider is changing its focus to more outreach than, not gathering the information, but putting the I mean, a lot of this, there were comments that, oh, they're just gonna do it, they're gonna do it anyways, there's nobody that's on the committee that even has a 7th or an 8th grader, but just say, if you took the reasoning, or the committee focused on letting the community know the reasoning why we're looking at this, with the drops in enrollment, with the better use of our facilities.
Well, there was a letter attached to the survey with all the rationale, but I don't think they did it.
And that's survey, right? You don't know what you're gonna get, especially an anonymous survey. You can say anything you want in an anonymous survey. We don't know who did it, and that's part of it. One of the conversations we had last week when we were making these recommendations is narrowing down some of our questions so they weren't so open-ended. Mr. Cronin, not to throw you there, but he brought it up, is should we have more questions on, we hear your thoughts, but at the end of the day, do you think that this would be more beneficial than negative? Should we do this?
Right.
And we didn't, the only one that we had that for was the student survey. That was the only question where it was either yes, no, maybe, or I don't care. We didn't ask that question to the community or to the staff. And if we were going to do that again, we would add those questions in there because there's a wealth of information that they provided, good and bad for us, but at the end of the day, it was really hard for us to decide, so would they be in support of this or would they not be in support of this?
Right.
Then again, the dedicated bus coming out of Twin now might change a lot of minds too.
I think that's gonna be hard no matter how we slice it. Transportation is always going to be a challenge because the sheer geography of our district is a
Right.
challenge.
That's kind of what I
That's
was
never
joking
gonna
about. It's like the
change.
distance
Right.
between the towns isn't gonna change.
Right,
whether we
I just
talk
went
about
out to
this this
register
year
a kid
or
to
2
Bretton
years.
Woods last week and I got as far as Bretton Woods and thought, my God, I've been in the car forever. And it's one night to go out and, fit skis from Lancaster to Bretton Woods and, thinking about making that schlep every day as a small child, that's a lot of time. And they don't have the benefit of stopping at Yaya's like that. The other thing that I sort of didn't see in these recommendations, but may well have been part of the conversations by the committee that I want to be sure we consider is, what would it take from a facilities perspective? So I'm asking you, Rob, what would it take from a facilities perspective for this campus to be ready to receive? And what's the lead up time that we would need to take into account? Is it as simple as saying, okay, based on enrollment, next year we're gonna bring them here, and then that puts the whole facilities team under the gun, or do you need a year or 2 years to prep
So
for
when
that?
we evaluated this from bringing middle school up here. We looked at the classroom space that we would need to dedicate. It's basically that north end, right? We would want to consider doing some bathroom upgrades. There's a teacher's copy room right there that used to be a bathroom. We could convert that back into a bathroom, much cheaper than this, because we're not looking to do an entire hall, right? So that's one consideration. But the reason why we were deterred is if we were to bring them up next year, there was 2 blocks during the day, we would have been 5 classrooms short for high school students. Which means you're taking away high school courses. I think it was the year 26, 27 school year was when that number wasn't a problem.
So, well, there's not a,
Projected.
Based off of projections.
Projected,
there's no issue in restarting a new committee next year or the year after, so.
How much startup time estimated would you need though before?
You would want an answer from the board by budget season as we're developing the budget.
It will have a huge budget.
Right.
Yeah, and we would have to, you know, the elementary schools allocations would shrink, and then we would have to see, you know, just
Staffing as well.
staffing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the construction.
Thank you.
I would, this is what we want to do. I would make a motion to accept the committee's recommendations 1, 2, and 3. And then number 4 would be to disband the committee with the board's heartfelt thanks.
And can we add number 5 to revisit data on an annual basis?
Number 2 kind of does that. Number 2 says evaluate enrollment annually to ensure fiscal responsibility and avoid duplicate programs in the 2 schools. I kind of thought that was,
I see where you're going.
Motion's made.
because I had written out a number 5 and I'm like, oh, it's kind of there.
Motion made by Ben, is there a second?
Can I
I'll
make
second it.
Can I make one recommendation? Put the word, evaluate enrollment annually in the fall, because that would be the time to do
The
it.
BOY.
The BOY data.
Which is kind of number
Coinciding with-
5 there.
That's where
yeah.
number 5 comes back in, coinciding with the submission of BOI data.
Okay.
And then that would give us an opportunity.
Yeah, I'll,
You amend
this
the
will be
motion.
it.
So we're gonna have to add an action agenda item. To do that, 'cause I didn't.
Do you want to just tee up an action agenda item for the first December meeting?
Yeah, why don't we
Yeah.
just fix
Yeah.
it? We'll just do it then.
Okay.
Fine. Done. New business.
And again, with thanks to the committee for their hard work.
Absolutely.
It was a blast.
Any other
I
new
like the
business?
depth of folks in that committee. So broad.
We ready for the action agenda?
Yes.
Action agenda item number 1, to approve the following resignation. Erica Kay, Whitefield Elementary School, paraprofessional, effective December 8th, 2023. Tara,
Second.
second by Evelyn. Any comments, questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. Action agenda item number 2, to approve the following nominations. Samantha Cushing, White Mountain Regional High School, varsity softball coach, provided sport will be offered. Michael Martins, White Mountain Regional School District, middle school jazz band, salary $1,134. Angelica St. Onge, Whitefield Elementary School, paraprofessional, level 1, salary $15.50 per hour, 3 days per week. Moved by Chris,
I'll second
second by Tara. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Action agenda item 3, to accept the grant from First New Hampshire Robotics, First NH, in the amount of $6,200 to cover the team registration for the 2023-2024 season and the kit of parts shipping charges for the White Mountain Regional High School robotics team.
So moved.
Moved by Evelyn.
Second it.
Second by Ben. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Action agenda item number 4, to approve the following child rearing leave request. Emily Robertson, Whitefield Elementary School, teacher, effective December 10, 2023 to March 4, 2023. I'm sorry, March 4, 2024. Gabrielle Weatherby, Whitefield Elementary School teacher, effective January 15th, 2024 to March 4th, 2024.
So moved.
Moved by Ben,
Second.
second by Herb. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Action agenda item number 5, to approve the following fundraising, crowdfunding requests with campaign funds anticipated to exceed $500. Lancaster Elementary School Student Council Annual Pancake Breakfast with Santa event. Class of 2026 movie night.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved by Evelyn, second by Chris. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Action agenda item number 6, to approve the following policy for amendment. KF, use of school facilities. Moved by Chris,
I'll second it.
second by Tara. Any questions?
I do.
Yep.
I'll go. I mean, does this change, would this change, as I read this change, it would preclude a sitting president from visiting the school? As we've had 2-3 times in history.
I think it was political rallies.
I thought it was.
But that's not what it says.
Political related
campaigns.
events.
I initially thought it would be political rallies,
I think the wording.
Yeah.
Campaigns.
because I agree with Ben that we're not gonna tell us.
No, and then,
Well, I mean, it's an opportunity that would be
Right.
missed. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Plus, aren't school board meetings? politically
No,
related?
this is
No.
a nonpartisan board.
It's the
But-
activities of the, it's the activities of an
But we're
elected
elected.
board.
Yeah,
I
I know, but still not. So here's my take on this whole thing, is I feel like a school is the hub of our community. And I think that if we hold political rallies here, it can get messy. And I feel like we need to keep this as neutral territory as possible. If there's somebody that's elected, that's Hassan or Custer, whoever, then they are elected officials, not holding political rallies, but coming to speak or coming to see the CTE program or whatever, is completely different than holding a political rally, and I think it's.
Well, I
So
think
I
it
would say
should-
the language says
it should-
political
I would-
related
Yeah, there
events,
needs
and I
to
would say
be-
if a sitting politician
Yeah, I agree.
visits
Yeah, I
somewhere
think that.
publicly, that's a
I-
political
I-
thing.
I think
what you're talking
we need to change the
Yeah.
word.
Right.
political campaign event
Rather than political.
Yeah.
would be
I
a
agree with
different
that.
story.
I agree with
But
that, so we need to
We should
change.
change it.
Yeah, I would say
Change
this,
the word.
this language, I can't
Uh-huh.
So is
support.
there a motion to table the agenda item until the change,
Can we change it now?
or we can,
We can change it.
We just say no political rallies.
The edits have been moved, and so now we
That's
can move to edit the edits.
so,
Well,
what's
I
more
would,
acceptable?
I would come back to what Ben said. I mean, if the sitting president said, I want to come for, to hold an event at
Effectively
the
a state
school.
visit.
Well,
Not really a
but,
state visit, but.
but again, I would, if you're a politician, especially at that level, and you're out in public, that's a political event.
It's not a
And-
campaign.
It's not a,
though.
it's
not a
not a
campaign.
campaign.
Campaign
rally.
fundraising event,
Yeah, it's not a campaign rally.
It's not even about
or
fundraising.
rally,
it's-
yeah.
I think
You're
we also,
campaigning or election events, are we talking election events? What do you?
but I think also we have to look at, the mission of, like, the reason for the school, right, education of our students. That process is also part of civics engagement,
Yeah.
I feel like we might be taking an opportunity away from students who might want to attend those kinds of events, as well as our citizens who are taxpayers who.
I just think
Pay
that there
for
are
the
other
building.
places for political rallies, and I think a school where everybody has such different opinions should be a place of neutrality. I think it keeps it as a safe place for people. And I think that I agree with Ben in that, and you actually, something that's already elected, it's different, but I think there's a difference between a politician coming in and speaking and talking and da-da-da and teaching, there's an educational component, but when it's a political rally, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me, it changes things, it changes the dynamic. I just feel like a school should be a place where it's just, things are just neutral.
I think that anything
In
that happens in our facilities should be welcoming to any individual that uses our facilities, any student. A political campaign rally is not welcoming to all students.
Right.
To all of our students, or even all of our teachers, or even all of our board members. So if we wouldn't allow a student to say something on that stage, why would we allow a politician to say something?
You raise the question of would we allow students to say those things?
So that's the way I feel. So, and the
For me-
only fair way to do it is no political campaigns.
I think my concern is less to do with partisanship and more to do with the drain on resources and preparedness. If you have someone who's an elected official who's coming, so to use Ben's example of a sitting president who's coming to campus with an intent to meet with students and engage them in some sort of educational event, or the Supreme Court event that we had last year, right? Those are examples of people who are in an office, who are coming here to augment the educational experience. And it's essentially a closed event for the folks who are on campus.
And there were events during the school day.
Well, maybe it could be an evening event that's open to students, but the pull on resources from the community looks very different than if we're allowing the facility to be used by an outside party, anticipating an influx of people to the region, to the school, whether at any one of our 3 schools. There's a certain level of planning that goes into that in order to make sure that the entire event stays safe and that our properties are well protected and safe and not damaged in the process of playing host to an outside party. And much of this policy is about that preparedness. It's talking about things like making sure that there's some sort of crowd management in place. It's talking about making sure that there's respectful use of our property, that we're not in violation of drug-free school zone kinds of rules. Those kinds of things are built into this policy. And if we're talking about bringing political rallies or campaign events to the building outside our normal educational process, we have to be mindful of the fact that these schools exist within municipalities that provide the public safety support. And so we do whatever we want about here are the doors you have to use and here's how many cars you can park in our parking lot. And that feels like we have a locus of control that we've controlled really well. But the simple fact of the matter is a large influx of people who are following that public event and anticipating potential entry into our campus puts pressure on our fire departments and our EMS departments and our police departments and our potentially hospitals. We have to, for events like that, you have to plan for worst case scenario and hope it never happens. And so I would say, sitting from my professional seat, there's a lot of planning that has to go into being prepared for an influx of people at a public event. That's different than a visit from a sitting president to see our students. And so regardless of what gets said on the stage, regardless of whether people think that the event is going to be a really happy, joyful event, or it's going to be an exclusionary event, or any of those things, there's a whole bunch of municipal resources behind the scenes that a lot of people don't even have an awareness of that have to be considered and marshaled to support that. And for me, that would be the deciding factor when we think about the semantics of this addition of a statement about not making facilities available for a particular kind of event, is drawing the boundaries on what we can control within our district versus what we may be asking our municipalities to withstand because we decide to say yes to someone who asks if they can use our campus.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about too is there's a difference between having an elected official here and having a campaign rally. A campaign rally could put us all in a situation where they're like, oh, you approved this specific party to come here and do this campaign rally, almost like we're endorsing it or endorsing.
Well, I mean, the same
And
thing
that
can be
gets
said
scary.
the same thing can be said for if it's a sitting president. I
But
mean,
it's that
only
they're
half the
elected
people
by
are
the
gonna be
people.
happy that you've invited that particular president.
But if
Right.
somebody's elected and they earned it free and clear, they're elected, it doesn't, I mean, I get what you're saying, but when we're supporting a campaign rally, which precedes the election, then that puts us in a position of,
What
It
if
could
it's,
just get
what if it's the
sticky.
sitting president who wants to do a campaign? I
they can't
mean,
do campaign rallies.
well,
But if the
but-
sitting president wants to come and talk,
I
at
think
this,
you
that's
speak to the
different.
purpose of the event and the resources it's gonna pull down. We, as a board, we tend to be a pretty apolitical board, and we get a lot of really good work done, and I think there's a difference between saying, yes, we said yes to this candidate, full stop, versus we said yes to this candidate, no to that candidate, right? You don't wanna cherry pick who you say yes and no to, because that's where you start to get into the weird weeds of, oh, really, what is your board doing? And that's not, I don't think that's the intent of this revision. I think the intent of this revision is to really make sure that we're controlling the locus of control we have. And the policy as written currently sits in that space of like, what's the use of resources in order to make this a viable thing for some outside party to use our space?
The last thing I would, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The last thing I would add to this is I think one of the things that, having not grown up in New Hampshire and being, you know, by New Hampshire standards, being a newbie here, I've only been here 20 years. You know, one of the really cool things about this state is the involvement of the early primaries here, and you know, the First in the Nation primary that you can go to, you know, around the corner and you bump into these people who are running for president. That's a really unique thing about New Hampshire, about growing up here. And so by having something like this, I think we're kind of closing a door on perhaps some experiences that might be interesting for our students and for our taxpayers.
Well, and you know, as I read our policy a little further down, under responsibility for approval, it says, it shall be the responsibility of the principal to approve public use of the school facilities. All requests must be made in writing to the principal of the school. Final approval will rest with the superintendent of schools, who will issue a request approval or contract where there is need for one. Once approval has been obtained from superintendent of schools, yada, yada, yada. We don't have any say in this policy.
Well, our say is in deciding that's who's responsible.
Right.
Yeah.
But
we're
that's what I'm
delegating,
saying.
yeah.
We're talking about different things here, and I guess
Any restriction we put in that preamble, Ben, is the restriction that we're then entrusting our leadership team to act within. Right, so that's where it comes. is
so.
that-
But if we're entrusting them, why do we have to add that? If we're entrusting them to do what's right, then why does that have to be there?
Well, in my experience in 6 years on the board, when we have vague policy, they're gonna come back to us anyway and say, okay, board, you're not clear in your directive to us. And this feels like it could be something that needs some more discussion. We're looking to you to help guide us because our role as a board is to set strategy and policy. And when our policies are not clear and not vague, it's harder on the individual administrators who have to make that decision. And they put a lot of themselves out there if they make a decision that then becomes something the community isn't happy with after the fact. So the point of the preamble of a policy like this is for us to decide what boundaries we feel comfortable allowing them to act autonomously within. That's why, from my perspective.
Keep
We
in
don't wanna
mind
set
that
boundaries and let you all.
the
go
target
willy-nilly,
audience
go
for a
it, but-
campaign rally are voters. and
Right. There are a million.
95% of our
places to see-
students aren't voters.
There are other places to see.
And there are plenty of
politicians, like,
places.
What you're talking about.
Well,
The
for,
political climate is kind of crazy, and it's hot temperature, and I just think staying away from campaign rallies specifically is a great neutral stance to take. That's just how I feel. If somebody's elected, great. I think that there's a difference. There's a different element to a campaign rally versus elected official. It's so different.
Well, I guess then my first question would be, or maybe is, why don't you make an amendment to fix this then? Because right now, we're talking
Yeah.
about political related events. We're
Yeah,
not talking about.
We
campaign
agree that
routes.
that's not the right language.
But I'm saying, let's fix it then.
Yes,
And
yes.
let's see where it comes down
Yeah.
at that point.
Okay.
We should make a
So-
motion to edit it. Okay, I make a motion to edit this.
To,
To
yeah,
include,
see what it is.
School board does not make our facility available for political campaigns or rallies, and/or rallies.
Okay, so, as amended, is there a motion for action agenda item number 6? To approve the policy KF, use of school facilities as amended.
No, we haven't voted on amending it. We have to vote on the amendment first. Point of order there.
so I make a motion to amend this policy to state no political campaign rallies.
Motion is made, is there a second? There is no second.
I'd like to move that we table this and kick it back to the committee for some real thoughtful rework of the statement. I see what the intent is here,
Yeah.
but I think 8:20 PM on Thursday to try to get it through a vote is probably not the right time to make a thoughtful edit to the language, and instead, we should afford the committee the opportunity.
Chris, the
Fine
committee
tune
is,
that a little.
is me and Tara.
I get it.
We understand that. Which is why I was just going, to
I
say-
think it requires clear-headed, light of day, rethink of that language in a way that is consistent with the other components of this policy and with what we're really trying, like, speak back to intent. What are you trying to accomplish here? Are you protecting the property? Are you protecting access to civic engagement on the part of our students? What's the boundary that you're trying to set for the building administrators who ultimately are gonna be making the decisions about yes or no on the event?
I would, second your motion to table it, because I would like to hear more of what Ben and Herb have to say, because I can just see their gears turning, and I agree, it's not enough time.
okay. And action agenda item number 6 has been moved to table and seconded. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. That is the end of the action agenda items. We'll adjourn the meeting and wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's been up there.
You went